Hey everyone, it's Kate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast, and my buddy Nate Shaw of Brooklyn Music Factory. This is wild. He's here. I didn't know that you wrote music for Oprah, and that you played jazz for the U.S. State Department in Europe. I mean, I knew you co-founded and we're really the driving force behind Brooklyn Music Factory, which is this innovative music school in Brooklyn. I've been there, you guys. It's uber cool.
You visited.
If I lived in Brooklyn, my kid would go there. But Nate also has awesome an online app from Brooklyn Music Factory. But we're going to talk a bit today about holidays and music, and I will let Nate talk, you guys, I promise. But there's this real sense in I would say among like cultural creatives, if you will, that that entertainment and music has been outsourced, right? So it's like, it's up to the musicians and the entertainers and the people making movies and the performing artists to do that. And then we listen to them, and your message is really different. So let's start there.
Nice, Kate. Yeah. First of all, nice to see you. And hear you. And I'm glad to be on the show here with you on the podcast. I think, I was just talking with an adult student last night about this, around the idea of, first of all, let's just keep it very real, around the idea of why most of us took some kind of music lesson at some point in our life, right? I'm guessing that if I had to venture a guess, I'm going to go with over 90% of your listeners at some point took some kind of music lesson. Were forced to take a piano lesson, played flute and band, whatever, but they were in some kind of music instruction. And probably a good chunk of those people no longer play. They don't necessarily consider themselves musicians anymore. And so I was talking with Brian, one of my adult piano students, last night after our lesson. And I was like, I have a theory behind why we start misidentifying ourselves as adults, specifically with music lessons. And that is because when we're taught initially, it's almost like it's some kind of circus act. Like we're just trying to be able to perform something on an instrument. Like there's a piece of music, everybody learns Fur Elise, that's their first legit classical piece. And then they play it for the grandparents, and they play it in recital, right?
Yeah.
And it
check. I check those boxes, Nate.
Yeah, you check the boxes too, Kate, right? I think most of us check a version of those boxes. The challenge is that it then becomes this performance piece, right? Like we're expected as kids, in this case, to then perform for whomever, the family, the friends, the school musical, etc. And it always stays at that level. It's as if it's a trick that we can keep playing, that card trick that always gets us some laughs at the party, at the family gathering. We never actually go deeper into, in the case of music, sound. We never go deeper into unlocking our musical mind and the theory behind the building blocks behind the music. And so as a result, we think that actually being a musician is literally just performing this trick for us, which leads me full circle back to your hypothesis that we're at a stage now where, we're supposed to people are supposed to perform for us, and we're on the other side, in this case of at this time of a screen, but usually it's just like, we call it that invisible, like the glass wall, like performers on stage, audience on the other side, and there's a wall between us. And so I really think what you're talking about, actually you have to rewind tape all the way back to your childhood, those music lessons, that experience of what it means to, kind of execute on an instrument, perform that trick for the family. Everyone applauds. You feel you get a little ego boost for a moment, little massage of the ego, and then people sort of tap on you, and you're like, tap on your head, and you're like, and what a good child, what a good kid, so smart, and all of these things. But as a musician in that moment, you've barely scratched the surface, right? All you've done is actually executed something for someone to show that your body could do the thing. But you and I both know that, like, the value of the process to get there comes from how deep you're willing to go, how many layers of the onion you're willing to pull back as you get towards for Elise, right? Are you really willing to listen? Are you really, really willing to understand the chords that go with it? Are you willing to understand, like, what was the space that the composer was in to create this piece of music? You know, finding emotional resonance rather than just, you know, physical execution.
Yeah.
Anywho, that's my long answer to.
Well, and what's from hanging out with you and Pira at Brooklyn Music Factory, it's clear to me, and I know not, I mean, you and I have known each other more from helping each other grow businesses and less around, me as yoga healer and you as musician and someone who invents new ways for people to learn how to, or to be musicians. I won't even say to learn, because I'm not even sure that's the right word. To bring out their inner musician, we'll say something like that.
Yeah,
And I'm sure you'll correct
I like
me.
that.
Is like, there's this like, let's get into a band and make music. Like, let's get together and do this. And yes, there's also the skill development and stuff like that, but it's not coming from the same, it's not coming from the same place of performing from the grandparents. It's coming from having a musical, allowing the inner music to come out, or having a development of the self that's musical.
Yeah, and I think that if we want to simplify it, I think there's a lot of value of thinking about music in simple terms. It's an alternative form of communication. It is just another language, right? So for those of us that love to learn languages, you know, myself included, like, you never want to be the person that just has a textbook knowledge. You want to get your language to the point where you can go into the cafe and order something. You don't only want to be able to find the bathroom. You'd like to have another level of conversation, right? And so there's that key word, conversation. So I think, first of all, when we think about ourselves as musicians, just think about ourselves as, how many different ways do we like to communicate? Right. And so if you were to walk into Brooklyn Music Factory, the first space you'd walk into would be our community room. And our community room also happens to have our stage on it, which generally the stage is that area that is a resistance point, right? For most people are like, yeah, I'm more comfortable over here than there, right? So we put the stage right there in the community room. And then we bring people, even when their parents are waiting for their kids' lessons, they're hanging out on the stage. You know, I'm there on the stage writing a song with a bunch of kids that I'm grabbing from the community room, or we're playing drums. I have tons of African drums. You've seen them. Like, I love, been to Africa to play drums, and I just love the communal element of an instrument like that, because anybody can hit a drum, and it always feels good to do. So, to get to the unlocking of your inner musician, to me, it's actually could be a little bit simpler. It's just like, hey, how about we just unlock another form of communication, right? Yeah. And of course, there's just a myriad of benefits that go with that, not the least of which is forming deeper relationships with people than you might otherwise be able to do, say, with words. Dig it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so talk a little bit about that, because there's the why you get kids in bands or adults in bands that, like, some people, they're not ready to be in a band, right? Or something like that, where you get the, like, well, they don't have the skills to do the scales or blah blah blah, and you're like, right. No, let's get people making music together. So why?
Yeah. So, I love the way you framed it. They don't have the skills to be invited to the party. Like, you have to first you have to check all these boxes before you're allowed to sit behind the drum set. Actually, think about it for a moment. Like, if you were to go to some other cultures, like, let's go to Senegal for a second, and you were to show up at, say, a naming ceremony where you have a newborn, and they do this naming ceremony at day 10, and the entire community gathers, you would find a circle of women on the outside, all sort of like banging palm fronds together and singing. And on the inner circle, you would see all of these drummers sitting. And those drummers would be from the age of, say, 2 to like 82 or 102, right? So you've got that 2-year-old that gets invited from literally from the point of where they can just sit still long enough to bang on something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you talk
Take
about
a minute from nursing and go bang on this thing because you can.
Right, totally. So just hold on to that image for a second. Just imagine you're in someone's compound. And there's all these people gathered. In the middle is this infant, and there's all these different age ranges singing, dancing, and playing. Everybody is making music.
Yeah.
Of
Together.
some kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Together. Now just grab that image and transfer it, or just, into a rock band studio. Okay, just hold that image for a second and be like, everybody plays from the moment that they can hit something like a drum, or in the case of Brooklyn Music Factory, hold one of our, 3/4 or half-size electric basses. And so the reason is because from the outset, we as educators, we as parents, just we as humans need to validate that we're meant to be there, and that these instruments are opportunities. And the only thing standing between us and the instrument is that resistance point, or that cultural the cultural block that we put up.
Yeah.
I.e., you said it perfectly. Joey's not invited because how could he possibly play bass? He doesn't know the scales yet. So I want to just add one last thing to this, put the button on it. We would find huge benefit in reversing the order of that comment. How could Joey ever learn to play scales if he wasn't first invited to jam? Just
yeah.
sort of flip it.
Because why
for a
would he
minute.
even want to get better? Like, why would he even want to?
Exactly. Yeah. And when think about, so Kate, you and I know each other primarily from helping one another grow our businesses, and just, I've asked you for help more times than I know, right? You've drawn me more amazing sketches of how to design my way out of a problem. And so, but keep in mind, so first of all, of course, I love the opportunity to tap into your wisdom, but at the same time, it is a social gathering. It's you, me, 3, 4 other business owners connecting. And the most profound connections happen when we get together in person and spend, as many hours talking about the business as just coexisting and, being together. And so music is no different. These kids, just like us as adults, these kids want to show up, and they want to know that there's something social happening, that they're seeing other 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds on the same musical journey as they are. They don't need to understand the why. They don't even need to understand the scale yet. It's like soccer league. They need to show up and know that there's going to be 12 other kids that all want to run around a field.
Yeah.
Pick a ball.
Yeah.
So anyways, I like the idea of reversing that, as you put it, why would they ever want to even stick with it long enough to learn their scales if they didn't first have the opportunity to just get on the field, run around and kick the ball?
Yeah, it's so, there's so many levels to I think a lot of people listening who had music lessons growing up are reliving some horrors of their childhood as we're having this conversation. And I imagine that's totally normal for you. But it was funny because when we were talking about forced piano lessons, that came up in the last month where he was reliving some horror because we were at a funeral and someone had to play who clearly was taught how to do something rather than it arising naturally or from a feeling connection to music. Right. And I think we've all seen that enough times to be like, oh, right, I was kind of taught that too. And and this is going to now turn into a therapy session. So, we're right. Cause that's what happens, right? It's right. This was a natural part of human culture. It was tribal and archaic. And then it was basically delegated to people who had, professional level skills at some point. And we see a lot of that. We see a lot of that now. And then it's hard to be famous. So people will tell aspiring artists to not bother, essentially, and to get a real job or whatever. So there's that whole thing. We don't have to go there. But one of the things that I realized over time is like we had to practice alone. So the piano in our home, and we all had to take piano lessons, was in the living room, which was formal, and not in the family room. So music was not a casual thing we did together. It was an isolated thing we do apart. And so a lot of what you're saying is like, hey, this is natural. Like, put on some music, bang around. And one other thing I want to bring up is like when we were at BMF, Brooklyn Music Factory, as a group, and we were there to talk about business stuff. Like we weren't there to play music. Like none of us were like, yeah, we're going to fly into Brooklyn for the weekend, which is not easy because the airports and all that. And we're going to go jam with Nate. It was, we met up there for different reasons, but like all of a sudden we're a band and, like
we were literally meeting in a band room.
We were meeting in a band room. So like all of a sudden someone's on the drums and someone else picks up a guitar and like the rest of us do the doo-wots or whatever, right. And we're moving like, and there's this whole thing that starts to happen. And like you're saying, like we know each other in a different way. Now, what I see in there when I look at this, like that doesn't just happen. Because like you said, there's all these barriers to resistance, but it does happen around people who know how to break down those barriers to resistance, which you and Pira happen to be world-class at and have designed your business around. And there's something that when someone knows, we find this all the time with habit evolution and body thrive. If a core group of people know the way, everyone else just falls into the way. Right? They don't have to learn anything. They just are adapting to this is what the group does. So a new kid shows up at BMF in Brooklyn and all of a sudden, like that's what's normal around there. And so then they pick up the drum or they pick up a guitar or they pick up a microphone and start singing their lungs out. And it's just normal.
Yeah. So you touched on a whole bunch of really, really important points around normalizing the experience, but, let me work backwards actually, because you made some awesome comments about where your piano was placed in the home. So I want to get there in a moment, but I want to start with what you ended with and just riff off that for a second. I can't tell you how many times, again, I want to go back to that community room for a second. How many times, like I started this tradition, I don't know, a couple years ago, just because it felt like the right thing to do. Like oftentimes those are some of our best choices in life. But I grabbed a single drum and started going around, like one of these gorgeous Senegalese drums I have. I brought that around to everyone in the waiting room, and I was like, "Come on, go ahead, just give it a little taste. Go ahead, get your drum in for the day." And you've got these power moms just crunching on their laptop trying to get work done while you know exactly what I'm talking about while their kids in the
Who, me? No, I have no idea. No idea.
No idea, Kate.
I bring that thing everywhere. Soccer field.
Exactly. You're just like jamming it out. So I bring the drum over. I'm like, it feels so good. Just get your hands on the drum for just 2 seconds. And they're like, ba-doom, boom. And then I take it to the next person. Ba-doom, boom. Take it to the kid. Take it to everyone. And what happens is you just begin to break it down for everybody. People are like, oh, I guess that wasn't that scary because frankly, the adults are the ones that are scared, not the kids. But B, they start going like, oh, that did feel kind of cool. And it was okay to break my focus for a moment to just get my hands on this drum from Senegal. Because guess what? The chances of me having that opportunity over the next 7 days is not great. And I get the opportunity for that tactile experience right now. And so I started doing that. Just be like 4:30, the joint's packed with people, and I just start walking the room and doing that. And what it does is it begins to normalize that kind of behavior. Like you could just play. Actually, you can play anytime. Actually, you don't even need to be prepared for someone to walk up to you with a drum. You could just start drumming. And so I tell that story because, I think there's two facets of it that are important. The first is the choice that I'm making as you talk about it. When you say, when you sort of show the path and you lead, that actual choice for all of us, actually there's a little resistance there too.
Yeah.
Like maybe I shouldn't interrupt that mom.
Yeah.
who's working hard. Maybe I should just go back to my own laptop and work on the spreadsheets I was working on to make sure we don't run out of cash, or whatever.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
totally.
talking about?
Yeah, the real.
So
Yeah.
that's the real deal in the moment that we're making. So first of all, we have to make the better choice in that moment, which is like, oh, actually, I'm going to model the behavior
Yeah.
that is.
And it's intuitive, right? Like there's the sense of like, I should do this. And then you check it like, is that true? And you're like, yeah, that's true. I should do this.
That's absolutely true. And so rarely, and by the way, the flip is true too. When you're forcing something
Yeah.
and you're like, man, I'm just trying to drive my message home. Brooklyn Music Factory, joyful music lessons. Everybody should be having a good time right now. Like you started trying to drive this thing home and
Yeah.
you're like, dude, this does not feel right. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but stop doing it now. And then the second part of it is total inclusion. So the moment you make that choice, like, oh, I intuit that what I should do is I should pick this drum up. I should turn off the jams that are on the that are playing on a PA, and I should go to every single human in the room. Like that's the second key to me as part of that story. What I took away from it was that there aren't those that are, more talented, so therefore deserving of our attention. There aren't those that are, more busy or less busy, so therefore shouldn't have that opportunity. It's like once you intuit the thing, Kate, like you put so well that you intuit like, oh yeah, that's my action. That's what I'm going to do. And it feels right. Then you bring it to as many people as possible.
Mm.
And I think that's a key. That's one of the key things I've learned over the 11 years of Brooklyn Music Factory, which is, like talent is one of the most poisonous words that we've come across, i.e., it can be a thinly veiled term for excluding us and our opportunity to play. And then number two, it's ass kicking hard to actually include as many people as possible.
Yeah. When every single one of those people has resistance.
Yes, it takes real effort. You know this, but yeah, I'm sure you know this better than I.
Well, I think I'm not sure. I mean, maybe, but maybe not. I mean, my resistance to music is really strong as musician or singer, right? And so like that's not and there's and I think this component of like how much of that was culturally trained.
Yeah, well, give us your quick history on music. Did you take piano lessons?
I took piano lessons. I started playing the clarinet in 6th grade, probably, or no, early. It must have been earlier than that.
Right. It's usually middle school band.
And then I played in band through maybe sophomore or junior year clarinet. So I had a really good teacher. Like she was really into it. And I'd get in trouble for not practicing. Right.
Does that sound familiar to anyone listening?
So like I learned how to read music and play music and be part of a band. My brother was super smart in the sense that he joined the jazz band. And so he had fun with music. And I never made it to the fun part of it.
So Kate, this is so awesome that you share that.
We're doing my therapy. Thanks.
Well,
thanks,
no,
Nate.
I dig it because I vividly remember my mom. My mom was an artist her whole life. And a lot of this, when we finally get to the topic of sort of unlocking our creativity, my mom will definitely come into the conversation. But I vividly remember her saying to my piano teacher, I was, 10 or 11, I think that we need to sort of switch gears here and maybe play a little jazz or blues so he can have fun. And I so remember this quote. And here's the deal for all of us. Fun is not a style of music. Fun is an approach. And fun is key because if we're not having fun as a 10-year-old, what is the chance that we're going to keep showing up week after week? Right? Yeah. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like just, again, not to just beat this thing to death, but think about when you played sports and had a great time. You were still doing drills, but they were mixing it up constantly, and some of them were super fun. Like I'm a huge b-ball fan, and I watch these, um, these Golden State Warriors practice where Steph Curry's shooting 50, 60-foot shots, from way beyond half court. And they purposefully put this stuff into their practice daily to make sure that not everything is about like precision and trying to get it exactly right to stay elite. They're just like, okay, we're doing an hour of shooting from like up in the stands. So anyways, fun is key. And people, honestly, people, I think, again, that's a cultural resistance point. We think that how I remember a parent asking me this in like year 2, and I was totally confused because I was still very early in my journey as a business owner, and so I didn't really know how to message to this at the time. But he literally said to me, "I don't understand how my child could be learning anything while she's having so much fun." I was like, damn, I don't even know how to answer that. I'm like, but she really wants to come back to music lessons every week. Isn't that enough? I'm like
imagine where that could go. She really just wanted to keep hanging out here with us.
I know. Hey, Kate, I want to go, before we move on to another topic, I want to go back to your comment about the piano and where it was in your home.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's also like the complexity of the piano. Like when I really look at it, I'm like, that's a pretty complex piece of equipment right there compared to like the drum story to establish just music in the home, right? So go ahead. And the clarinet's kind of a mess too, right? Like that's a hot mess of an instrument.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of, you got to find your fingerings, and then once you do, hopefully they don't slip off. But
and the embouchure and like the whole thing, right? Like
and
it's
it kind of hurts when you have braces.
Oh man, so true.
So we created this course called Your Family Band, and it's meant for parents that are starting their musical journey with their kids, parents that have really no idea how to pick a good teacher, how to get started, how to buy an instrument, that kind of thing. And it's an online course called, how do you find it? Probably brooklynmusicfactory.com/Your Family Band is my guess.
Yeah, anyways, something like that.
We can figure out how to find it later. But one of the areas, the very first segment of it talks about your play space at home. And basically, we unpack your story, what you just described. And we say, look, the first most important, when we look at all of the families, of the thousands of families that have come through Brooklyn Music Factory and the families that are still with us years later, one of the most common, actually the most common thread is that a parent is ready and willing to jam with their kid. And we oftentimes hear that as the parent is a musician. That's not what we said. We said that the parent is ready and willing to jam. Now, as parents,
doing the doo-wots and picking up the drum and the kids doing that, yeah.
But now think about it as parents. You and I are like cooking dinner.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood that we're going to jam with our kid if the piano's in the basement or hidden in another room or up in their bedroom, like somewhere where they're not going to, quote, bother us?
Yeah.
Right. So the very first chapter of Your Family Band is it's just about, hey, here's an instrument list. You can buy these toys like a hand drum. Here's a cheap keyboard. Here's a guitar. By the way, here's a guitar hook for your wall, because if you're putting your guitar in a case and sliding under the bed, see you later. Not going to happen. You're not going to pick it up and strum those 2 chords you learned way back in the day when you were in college. So you got to hang it on the wall, and you have to put your play space in a central location.
Yeah.
So it becomes totally normalized to stop by and grab the guitar off the wall and strum a couple chords.
Yeah. I mean, in behavioral science, it's called architecting your environment. So you architect your environment to enforce the habits that you want to have. And if you want your kids to grow up with the habit of playing music, then you architect your environment so that that's always right there. So they're more likely to do it than not to do it, right? Or that we're all likely to do it than not to do it.
And they did a study on children that grow up to be avid readers. And they kept thinking it must be a socioeconomic thing. Like, maybe your average income in the household defines whether or not you love to read. Turns out they found the leading cause to you wanting to loving to read is whether or not books and magazines were lying around your home, right? Didn't have
Yeah.
to be a lot of books. You didn't have to have a huge library. You just had to have a whole bunch of these things, as you put, designed just within arm's reach.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and what's that a reflection of? That's a reflection of the fact that other people in the home also wanted to pick up these things and read
Yeah.
them.
In Living Ayurveda, it's super practical, it's super down to earth, and we wanted to make a difference in your life, honestly, the moment you start.
Hi, it's Kate Stillman, and I'm going to tell you about how the Living Ayurveda course works and why it works the way it does work. A part of my natural personality is that I'm a futurist. I'm an innovator. I can't help it. It's just the way that my awareness works and has always worked. So I'm always looking at how do we make Ayurveda practical to solve for our biggest problems, at home, in nourishing ourselves and getting deep rest and passing on the habits to those who our lives affect. If we understand our habits are truly not our own, we say, hey, whose habits affect me and whose habits am I affecting? And can we align those habits with the kind of radiant longevity that we want to experience, right? Year by year, decade by decade by decade by decade in our road ahead. The other core part of my philosophy is around collective leadership, and I take those two words very seriously. I see how there's a whole next level of open-minded integration where we look at the questions that you're bringing, the conversations you're wanting to have, and we build that into our leadership model and help lead and guide our community in the direction of addressing the deepest, most potent issues that'll help us get the greatest traction in growth and transformational evolution. So that's a lot of, my philosophy on Living Ayurveda. I look at our planet, I look at the stresses to our ecosystems, the stresses to our human population, our human culture, and that's what we're solving for. So that's how the whole course is geared. I take my community very seriously, become part of my heart, we want to become part of my people, and that's how the course works. I mean, that's why it works too, is it's even though we're all coming in from all over the world, we have an experience of deep connection, deep community, and evolution together. All right, I hope that clarifies some of your questions around the Living Ayurveda course. So let's talk about games, because that's a huge part of your method is like you guys play games. And I like the drill analogy that you used with soccer, that like soccer isn't like go kind of put the ball in the net. There's a lot of other things going on that are taught through drills, and drills are like little small repetitive games that once people learn to do, they can start to do also on their own, and they can teach other people, and there's things that take off. So tell me a little bit about games, BMF style.
Yeah. So BMF style games. So first of all a game is an exercise renamed, as you put it, right? When the kid turns 14, guess what we start calling those same games? Now we're going to go on to an exercise, because the kid's like, I don't play games anymore, right? So just to be clear, and
then when it goes back to adult, does it go to games? Like, where do you start with your adult students?
Yeah, where do I? No, well, yeah, great. I call them, by the time I'm working with the adults, we could be totally transparent again and be like, listen, I want to gamify this because it's just going to be way more
Gamification. Okay, I love it.
Okay, so here's how to think about the games. First of all, I want to just sort of introduce a concept, which is ear before eye. So the traditional approach to, say, a piano lesson is you sit down at the instrument and you have a book placed in front of you. So you're leading with the eye.
Yeah.
This, of course, is totally illogical when you think about music, which is an oral, art form. Like, all we're supposed to do is we're supposed to wake up our ears. So these games, we start with basically what are known as ear training games in college. And what happened for us is, like, when I got back into teaching a bunch after my life as a, film and television composer, which was sort of my yet another career redesign midlife, I got back into teaching, and I realized that, when you're whatever, I guess I was 38 at the time, you can start to kind of design your own rules at that point.
Yeah.
Like you're almost an adult at 38.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to sort of, you don't have to just subscribe to the way people have done it before.
Yeah.
So I had about 10 or 20 students. And when they came in the room, you did just picture a 7-year-old boy who's like the last thing they need to do is sit down at the piano after a day at school.
Yeah.
Right. So they walk into the room and I'm like, first thing we're going to do, dude, let's just do 20 jumping jacks. Come on now, let's get moving. So we just start moving. Next thing we're going to do, I'm going to remove all chairs from the piano. Like there's no piano stool anymore. You're standing. I'm going to go over it. We're going to learn like one little hand position, just like a C position. I've got my piano here. Like you're just going to like learn a little C hand position. And so he's like, okay, we might even start earlier if it's very early on. We're just numbering our fingers, number 1, 2, and 3. So then I'm like, okay, Johnny, 1, 2, 3 in C position. Play me C, D, E. He plays it, he tries. And I'm like, great, run back to the corner. Let's do 20 jumping jacks. Come on, baby. We do 20 more jumping jacks. I think I called this the crazy hand position challenge or something like that. That's the first 15 minutes of the lesson. But guess what? It's just a basic deceptive learning approach. If I sat him down on the stool and said for 15 minutes, we're going to drill C hand position, he'd be hating life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead, what he remembers is 20 jumping jacks, but he's hearing in his ear the sound of C, D, E. He's beginning to translate that there's a physical like manifestation, representation of that sound. And he's beginning, and all the while he's having a good time.
Yeah.
So then we might move from that, which we would call a technique. That's straight up and down technique. That's just body awareness, trying to understand that you have fingers, that you're going to be required to use all 10 digits in order to be the piano player that you're capable of being. So let's introduce 3 of those 10. And so we move from technique, then we might move to like a groove game. We might play something like where we're basically just pacing around the room like quarter notes. Boom, 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 boom. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're just marching. And he's counting 2, 3, 4. Now, keep in mind, we might be thinking like, but this is so basic. But here is the difference. We start from a place of feeling it, like holistically feeling what it means to groove. And then we start calling out the note names, quarter, 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 quarter. So he's getting a confirmation from his own voice of what that thing is called. Mm-hmm. We've never opened a piece of music, like there's no staff paper. I'm not drawing quarter notes yet. We're just feeling the groove. And we're going half note, half note, half, and all the while we're moving. Now we're 30 minutes into our lesson. Dude still hasn't sat at a piano. Okay, but he's learned technique and he's begun to understand and unlock rhythm, right? Then the last portion, I might just have him stand and I might play an ear training game like wait a second, where we start hearing the distance between 2 notes. That's what we call a second in music. And so that's a third, C, E. And so this might start sounding kind of wonky. People are like, well, why does Joey, who's in his first piano lesson, need to understand seconds and thirds? Well, this is the musical mind. This is the theory, the building blocks behind it. And so we're leading with our ears. We're saying, Joey, listen, you have massive capability as a listener, right? You're just enormous. Like the possibilities of your musical mind are huge. So from lesson number 1, we're going to play a game that shows you what it's like to awaken your ears. You dig? So that's 45-minute lesson.
I mean, it's amazing, right? It's like it's on so many levels, whole person, all senses, the whole way of engaging that. And even that, I mean, when and I'm being like the group, you're the therapist for the group at this point, right? It's like, there's so many issues that had to do with whether the learning was intellect based rather than sensory based, whether it was, where it's like, it's just not a whole embodiment approach. And then for people that really wanted to learn music, like that was maybe never even introduced. Yeah. Like you said, it was like be the monkey at the piano. And there's no sense of, of really, because when you were doing the groove part, right? Like people are learning that, and they're also learning how to dance, and they're also learning how to use their voice, because that's coming from their body. And as soon as and that's what I always experience when I'm with you and Pira. It's like there's a way that you bring, by being yourselves and knowing your methodology, and all the whys behind everything that you're doing, and it flows seamlessly through you, but like it awakens people, it opens the door, and soon they're like, oh wait, I get the groove.
Yes.
I can use my voice, I can beat a drum, like, and it's this sense of like, and this is fun, and I like doing this with these people, and I want to do this again.
And you can't underestimate that last comment. Like, just think about all the times we've attempted to establish a new habit in our life, we want to learn something. Everybody here listening knows it's about consistency. There is no shortcut. Like, I have an adult student who's been with me for 10 years. He's about to play his first jazz trio gig. It's been his life dream. Like, this, literally, he's like, since he was a kid and his dad was playing Bill Evans records to him or McCoy Tyner records. And he's like, I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. And we have a phrase which is like the slow boat to Shanghai. Like, that's the approach that you have to take if you're actually going to realize that dream. It doesn't mean that you have to have ridiculous levels of patience. Instead, it means that every session should be hugely fun, extremely beneficial from a learning standpoint, and basically like a great show, i.e. you're left wanting more.
Yeah.
You leave wanting more. Like, and so, yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, Kate, because I want to get to this idea of creativity and how to validate ourselves there. But I'd like to share one, obviously at this juncture, Brooklyn Music Factory's gone entirely online. Right. So we have 430 students, I think, or maybe 440.
Andy's with you guys.
Yeah, Andy's taking guitar with us, which is awesome.
My cousin, who's working for Yoga Healer now, and he's been loving it. He's been loving getting back into guitar lessons. He loves his lesson. He's always pumped. He's like, I got to go to guitar. He never he'll go over and all these things and put things on. He's like, I got to go to guitar.
Nice.
I'm out of here. That's way more fun than this.
That's the validation we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. He wants to get back. And by the way, when I was like, dude, you definitely need to dust that guitar off. He's like, no, I can't really play.
And that was that was a year ago. Yeah.
Not even like,
oh, right.
4 months ago or something. I don't know. But like, I mean, when I was talking, I was like, dude, you got to start playing again. But I want to get to this. We've pivoted to online. So it's interesting to think about the story I just told about Joey coming in for his first piano lesson, which is extremely physical, right? And moving through what we call if you're, Kate, if you were in my studio right now, I'd talk about all of the learning opportunities within the space. So I want to move.
Yeah, it's physical.
Yeah, I want to move you into different corners of the room because there's another opportunity there. And just actually by, as you know, better than I do, but like moving into a new space, boom, that wakes us up again to the next learning opportunity. Online, what's fascinating is that while it can be difficult for certain groups of ages, the one-on-one lessons actually work quite well. And what we've done is number one, like I have multiple cameras, so you can use those cameras to sort of direct a student's focus in a really efficient way and quite effective. Number two, many of our teachers have like tripled down on story-driven teaching. So especially the age 4, kind of up to 8, it's just amazing to watch like Lena teach a 5-year-old piano lesson. The entire thing is a story from minute 1 to minute 30. And that's how she moves, that's how she moves Matilda through 30 minutes of piano and 3 different games. And it's all a story about, like, right now I think she has an alien named like Hobart who's trying to like get home to some planet. And so it's like, you'd think that like anyways, it translates. It's the
Well, I'll speak to. I mean, I've been in online education since '07, so it's been a while now.
Yes.
And what I keep finding is that like humans are getting way better at online education, and we're able to do things that we can't actually do as easily in person. And that's something that I think so few people have experienced or are able to communicate. I noticed with like, I did an event, a master review event, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 10 times easier for me to coordinate the things I want to point their attention to in real time on an online interface than it is in person. Now there's something lost, and I'm not saying that, but blah, 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 but there's something gained. And when we can attend to what that is, it just points to this explosive, I would say, growth in how humans can connect and learn and grow. So, okay, I want to bring it down to, because people are going to listen to this. A lot of people are going to listen to this after the holidays, but a lot of people are going to listen to it around the holidays. And so there's an opportunity.
Yeah, there is.
And there's fear. And now I'm sitting there like, oh no, don't make it real. Don't make it real. Don't make me have to beat the drum or sing the doo-wots.
Don't make me have to do it. I'd rather intellectually it and agree with it in theory.
Yes, agree with it in theory. I agree in theory with everything Nate says. Just don't make me do it. That's exactly it.
Okay, so let's make ourselves like, how about we just do we'll all do it. Well, Kate, maybe you'll take this challenge too.
Sure, I'll take the challenge.
Super straightforward. The holiday season is great because it comes with it a group of standard tunes that people grew up with. So it could be like, right? So we don't even need to sing a lyric. And basically 82% of your listeners were like, oh yeah, Frosty, totally. Right? So here's the challenge. If you know, and if you actually can strum a handful of chords on the guitar, then I say, number one, you decide you're going to be the accompanist. Okay? So that means all you got to do is, Google something like Frosty or some tune that feels totally comfortable. You've been listening to it since you were a kid, and figure out the chords. Okay? I promise you there's a YouTube video that will show you how to do it. Okay? Number two, you make an announcement that we're going to all sing one song. And it can be at dinner. That's a good one because that's a captive audience. Nobody can really get up from the table and run away unless they're really being bold. Okay? And so essentially all we're doing is we're going to sing. It can be totally out of tune. Nobody's judging, right? We're just saying we will in this moment, i.e. the holiday season, seize the opportunity to sing one song as a family. Dig it?
Dig it.
So it's not, and I promise you, half of our listeners right away will be like, I'm not a singer. I don't sing.
Right. Yeah.
No one in my family sings.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you
bad
have
voice. Bad voice problem.
Yeah. Bad voice, or I don't know the lyrics. I don't know all the lyrics. Or, okay, we have to check ourselves here. Because that is just a classic Resistance 101. You don't know all the lyrics. Everybody listening knows how to find the lyrics. Okay? Number two, I'm not a singer. Guess what? When there's caroling in the town square, like where I grew up, we caroled around this amazing tree in our hometown. Like 82% of those people were not singers. They were just all there for the hang.
Yeah.
Like they're celebrating the moment. That's all you have to be willing to do. And then number three, here's how you ultimately check yourself. When was the last birthday for your child or friend? And did you sing happy birthday? Yeah. Yes, you did. Yeah. So therefore, really, we're just busted down resistance number one. So basically, look, we have to stop measuring music as a tool to validate some sort of ego. And we need to start by using music as a tool to connect. Just like we would have a conversation. That's it. Done. Treat it like that, and then see if you can, see if you can just open up the family jam in any way, shape, or form that feels right for you.
I love it. So we have a keyboard in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I probably picked that up from you somewhere along the way. And the way that I'm going to do this.
Do you know a couple chords? You got some chords, Kate.
Oh, I know stuff. I know stuff. And we've got some app.
Yeah, that's enough.
Right? So I'm going to just start playing, and then Indy will start playing because she more or less just mimics, right?
Love it.
And then I'll start singing outrageously. So that's my work is if I can do something outrageously, then it doesn't then the quality control can just go out the window, because that's not the point.
Yes, it's not. Yeah, no, but we're not being recorded. Listen, what I might give you though, for your show notes is that my family does a video holiday card each year.
Your video holiday card. I need to get on that list.
And so I'm gonna shoot you a link to it. And so my wife, she does all sorts. She'll play whatever, but she would never consider herself the go-to musician to lead the family video. So if she can get onto a video with her 2 daughters and me and play bass and then send it out on YouTube to the entire extended family and friends, guess what? We can absolutely have a private sing-along in our kitchen.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll send that to you as inspiration for anybody who wants to. I don't know. Maybe some people want to make a holiday card.
Yeah, I think I want to make it a holiday card. I think I'm ready for that.
Nice.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and that's I'm so psyched that we've had a chance to get to know a little bit about Brooklyn Music Factory and just a whole other way of sound and music and games and fun and what it's really all about. Connecting.
Yeah, Kate, I never really got to talk about creativity as much as I wanted to. However, I feel like that last holiday challenge sort of opens the door to it.
It opens the door, and we'll do another one.
Yeah, we'll totally do another one. And if you want to play some games now, we have an iOS app called Big Music Games.
Big Music Games. Oh my gosh. I remember when we were sitting, I think we were sitting at a bar and you were telling me about Big Music Games years ago. And now
totally
it exists.
Free. Now, and it's there. You can go play a bunch of fun ear training games for kids. And so anyways, dig it.
I'm going to get it. I don't have it on my phone.
Well, maybe you'll
yeah, I'll do
it.
A
new approach. It'll help you break down some of the resistance from your childhood of.
Yeah. Well, and I feel, I mean, it's like, what is there to fear? Like, why is that there? And any of us who are like really getting into it, it's like, oh, it's probably not worth it. It's probably not worth it to be in that pattern.
Am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
Sure.
Because I want to quote my piano teacher, my jazz teacher. So I had a number of great teachers, but one of them, when I was in my early 20s and getting ready to move to New York as a jazz pianist and terrified, as we all are in our early 20s.
Amen.
He was like, we were working on improvising. And he was like, Nate, all you need to remember is that the worst that can happen is you just sound like shit. That's the absolute worst. It's not that bad.
Not that bad.
And I was like, okay. And he kept sort of saying that. And I was like, well, I guess. Anyways, point being that, we're
and it's not even the point. And I think that's the other thing, right? Is like, we're not training. Like, I'm never going to play in the boom boom room. And Nate and I hung out there and he was like, I used to play there. Or no, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. Up top, the top floor of the
Standard Hotel in Manhattan.
Standard, yes.
So such a cool room, such a great piano bar. But like, that's not us.
Right.
Exactly. And so it's not even the point. The point isn't even to sound good. Right. The point is to do something. Yeah. What's the point?
The point is to just freaking get into the game.
There's
a pickup game of basketball happening on the playground.
Yeah.
Join it.
Join the game. Have the full human experience. And that brings us back to Senegal. And it brings us back to like, this is part of the full human experience. Explore your humanity.
Love it. Thank you, Kate.
My pleasure, Nate.
We got a solid hour together, which is more than, well, You know,
I know.
it's a precious 60 minutes.
Yes.